We'll get started for tonight. Everybody hit the got it. Well, greetings and salutations. Welcome to Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. Tonight we're going to be changing the format up just a little bit. We're doing some tweaks. Most of you know we're doing some major changes on platform, and our delivery is going to be a little bit different as well. So we're all in this together. It's fun to have a smaller group as we get this thing started rolling. And with that, we've provided so much content. It's not that we're running out. We will never run out, but we want to have more interaction. The question and answer portion has been getting more robust, and I think more people are getting more out of it. And that's the direction we're not going to be going in the future here. For those of you who haven't jumped onto the podcast on the Answer is Yes podcast and Young Entrepreneur Syndicate podcast, Jim and I do that at least once a week. And that's been gaining a lot of traction, a lot of viewers. And so we're going to go more with that format, just some general discussion. But we're still going to launch off of, we've got to have a pivot foot, right? A planted foot to pivot off of. And so we're still going to talk about that a little bit. And I'm going to launch tonight's talk on that with follow-up. And follow-up, they always say in sales, the fortune is in the follow-up, right? If you're not following up, you're just scattering seeds. It's like scattering seeds, but you've got to do the weeding, the watering, and all that stuff. And I'm not going to go into great detail. I want to have more of a discussion on this. But having spent almost 15 years in commission-only sales, I can tell you that follow-up is a tricky thing because expectations of the consumer, of the customer, are different with every single one. And all I can tell you is if you don't know your customer, you can lose them or push them away as fast or as easy as you can gain them. And it's a fine line. It's one that has to be finessed. And the one rule that I always followed, well, two rules, was the first that my wife had told me, because I was in auto sales, import auto sales. And my wife, I never wanted to sell cars because of the stigma, the stereotype of a car salesman. And my wife sent me to work my very first day with a sticky note, and it said, dignify the process. And what that meant was bring myself, my values, my morals, my personality, the way I do business to that process. And that was going to change things. And that also included how I followed up with people. And all I can tell you is in most sales positions, they always want you to push, because if somebody's knocking on the door, chances are they're ready to buy. And that's the assumption and the expectation. And so they want you to push and push hard. And that's not my style. It was never my style. So my style was this, which was rule number 2. Number 1 was dignify the process. Rule number 2 was be persistent, but never a pest. And that just means following the lead of the customer. To me, sales was a funnel. And some people start way up at the top and they're just starting to gather information. And as they gather more information, they're funneled down into that. Okay, now I'm getting to be more serious. And finally, they're ready to make a purchase, whatever that purchase is, service, product, whatever. Unless you're in the medical profession and someone's coming in with an emergency, people always have a choice, right? And even then you have a choice, second opinion or whatever. So be persistent, but not a pest. And that means knowing where they are in the buying process. And from there, you follow their lead. But if you drop the ball, you better be able, willing, and professional enough to pick it back up. And that might mean an apology. I didn't follow up when I should have. Keep it short, simple, all those messages. You don't need a dissertation. You don't need, unless they're asking for it, they don't need a recap. Just remind them that you're there. We all understand that people are busy. So be professional, keep it short, always provide additional value on that follow-up call. Bring something new into the equation, not just the old stuff. You should know enough about them personally to be able to say something, that has to do with their life, their lifestyle as well. So keep it personal, and never, ever, ever make them feel guilty for not making a decision on the spot. So those were my rules. That's how I dignified the process. And I can tell you it worked well for me, both as a profession. I left an industry with my integrity intact. I can say honestly, I changed the industry in the areas that I worked. And it was exciting. It was fun because I didn't have to compromise my values. And that's really what we're talking about here. Part of your value system should be people deserve to be followed up with professionally. And so if you're just taking names and taking numbers and not doing the follow up, the problem's on your end. And if you're following up and blowing people out of the water, the problem is on your end. And if people just aren't ready to buy, that's not a problem. It's just the situation. So that's a 15-year commission-only sales follow-up strategy that I used. So Jim, I'm going to ask first your opinion. You've been in different lines of work, and obviously every line of work is different. But if you'll unmute and let us know what you're thinking on that.
Rod, I'm just curious, you're talking about a lifetime in sales for you. Can you explain like what a good sale looked like? Maybe when you're something you can look back on or remember, hey, that was a good transition. I met all their needs, met my needs. I wasn't twisting their arm. Because I think a lot of times if we understand what that looks like in any transaction, we can look at that, how it might look like in our life, right? Whether you're selling real estate or retail goods or whatever that might be. But what that transaction look like for you?
Sure. And that's a great question. And the first thing I'm going to give a compliment to a former manager that I had that literally let me build a sales team and train them and do things differently. His name was John Simpson, and he actually passed away last year. But when I interviewed for him, and this was almost a dozen years ago now, in the interview when he was looking to start a brand new sales team for a product line that a new dealership had just picked up, he asked me one question. He says, do you believe in the be-back bus? Okay. The be-back bus is when you talk to someone on the lot, they come in to buy a vehicle and then they leave. You hand them your card and it's like the kiss goodbye, and you put them on, it's known the be-back bus. And when your boss says, well, what happened to that customer you were just test driving? I put them on the be-back bus, right? They weren't ready to buy today. And that's never what a sales manager wants to hear. Put them on the be-back bus. What you did is send them to another lot to buy a car, right? So he asked me if I believed in the be-back bus. And I said, and probably this would have lost me a job at any other dealership anywhere in the United States. And I said, I absolutely believe in the be-back bus. I said, I believe that if I give the customer all the information that they need to make an informed buying decision, they're going to make the right decision for them. And sometimes that means they've got to leave and buy somewhere else. And he hired me. So that's what I did. When people would come in, I would ask them what their wants, needs, and desires were, and I would ask them what their budget was. And then I brought them down to reality. I would start, if it was a cash purchase, I would just make sure that they knew exactly what they were wanting and doing. For you, for example, Jim, you need a 1-ton truck to haul horse trailers and stuff. If I were to try and sell you something cheaper, a 3/4 ton or even a 1/2 ton that wouldn't do the job, I would be doing you a disservice. So I always made sure that I got a customer what they wanted and needed. If it was about color, and believe me, it doesn't matter what color your truck is to effectively pull a trailer, right? But some people like colors, right? If it matches the other cars in the garage or whatever, they like it to stay cleaner. I did whatever it took to get them the right color. So if I had to do dealer trades, if I had to do swaps, if we had to order something special, again, it's just being in touch with the client and saying, what is it you want? What will you not compromise on, right? And then meeting all those needs. And so in a perfect sale, that happened 15 times a month, right? And I trained a team that was doing it 15 times a month. And that's where the money is. It's just giving people what they want and being willing to wait. That's the biggest thing. And any sales manager out there doesn't want to wait because they want the money right away. Bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. I believed otherwise. I believed if you hatched a whole farm load of chickens, when they finally came home to roost, you would have a big payday. So in a perfect scenario, Jim, to answer your question, it's getting the customer exactly what they wanted, no matter what it took.
Well, I'll tell you, it's all about the color. You better have the right color for me. Fred's laughing. He knows. One of the things you said I really like that I think is important when you think about a sale is what needs are you meeting of that customer? I had a great one-on-one with Jim Spilson today, and we were talking about his opportunity and, figuring out what the customers are going to want, and providing that for them, right? Solving their problems or helping them move their initiatives forward. Even that's not as simple as buying a car, but, anything that you're selling, if you can fill the customer's needs, that transaction is going to go well. Or afterwards, and I love how one of my mentors, Meltzer, says, value for value, right? If you're going to do a deal, it should be a good deal for both parties. If you're going to sell something, it should be a good sale for both parties. I also think on the other side of a good sale is telling your story and authenticating what you're selling. I remember when I started back at Kettle One Vodka, and the first thing they did was show me an 11-minute video about their family history. Like literally sat me in a theater at their corporate office and we watched this video. And by the time you were done, not only were you thirsty for a martini, but you really felt connected to the family and what they were doing, and so they'll turn the lights on and they'll be like, well, that's our family history. And everybody that wants to buy our brand needs to understand that first. So we wanted to show you the video. And if you're out in sales or marketing, everybody watches that video. I thought, wow, how fascinating. I've never been in an organization where that was a requirement, especially an 11-minute video. You're not going to go in for a 5-minute sales call. But what happened with that is that it built loyalty across the country so deep that other brands couldn't knock it off. Once you were able to indoctrinate somebody in that simple video, which told the whole entire story. And then let me tell you, I don't care how good or bad a product tastes after watching a family history for 11 minutes. When you're done watching that, you're going to love that product, right? You're going to, wow, this is the best martini I've ever had. Now, it did help that it was a great product, but the point is sometimes that story and that authentication will trump over the product itself so that you believe in it and you'll believe what they've said. Like, okay, I get why this is such a top product. So if you're selling something, regardless of what it is, build your story around it and deliver the customer's needs, and you'll have a customer for life. I haven't been in a scenario like you have, Rod, selling stuff like cars or big purchases like that, or even real estate. But, I do understand the value of that. So thanks for sharing that.
Thanks, Jim. The other thing I want to mention, you just reminded me too, and that is that business is personal. It's personal. It's about family. And you need to be able to relate to people on a personal level. Number one, that means you need to understand their story. But they also need to understand your story. To have a relationship, it's a two-way street. So don't be afraid to let people know that you are a real person. If you're in a sales thing, or even if you're dealing with somebody else, don't be afraid to just be, we say it all the time, Jim, authentic, right? Well, you need to be authentic. And that means that follow-up is important. Being authentic to me is, if I did make that sale, when we did make that sale, we followed up with a phone call and thanked him and asked him if everything was going all right, asked him if they understood the equipment or needed a refresher course. And we always sent thank you cards. And, that's follow-up too. It's not just a follow-up to get a sale. It's a follow-up after the sale that's probably more important, because it always got us more customers and it got us loyal customers. And that's what to build a business, you need loyal customers and you need referrals. Someone needs to feel comfortable enough with you to send their family and their friends to you. And that's what it is. Business is personal, and that should include the follow-up.
Yeah, people forget that too, and how important that is. I can imagine the Be Right Back bus people. I'm sure you learned enough about them in your short discussion that you might have learned something personal where you could follow up with a thank you card, or, point on something like, hey, I hope your kids are doing well. I know you had to run to go to the soccer game or something, whatever it is, if you were smart enough. So I interviewed a gentleman by the name, well, he goes by Red Suit Realtor. I interviewed him last week. His show will be on my podcast tomorrow. But what was odd, and I know this guy's busy. He's a family man. He's selling lots of real estate. He's grinding, especially if you watch his stuff. He's out there hustling. He took the time to read my book before he went on the podcast show with me to know a little bit more about me. It was almost like he was interviewing me in the show, because he was relating some of his stuff back to me. I thought, how fascinating that he took the time to do that. It's the first time somebody's done that's been on my show, that actually read the book before they got on and knew, and it became very personal, Rod. And we had an instant connection. And I've known him lightly for the last 2 years, but since then, like, we've been going back and forth a ton. We're going to get together in about a week and a half in New Jersey. We're going to, believe it or not, we're going to do a 5-mile run, and he's going to wear his red suit while we're running, getting some exercise after a convention we're both at. So, but he took the time to make it personal. And even if he only read the highlights of my book, he read the right ones, or he thought to bring the right ones up. And I think we should always look for that opportunity to interact with others based on something personal that we can learn. If you take 20 minutes before an important meeting to understand who's in that meeting and what turns them on or off, you could win that meeting over, or you can win that sale over. So it's a good investment of time to bring that personal side in.
You're right. And it's funny. You just reminded me, I'm going to look on my shelf here. I have from my sales days, all of our salespeople, we made our own binders, right? And so when we had customers sitting there, if we had to go get a car gassed or go get a car washed or ready for delivery, we left our binders on our desk, right? And we said, oh, feel free, open the first one up. Feel free to take a look through that. And, while you're waiting, it'll give you something fun to do. And what it was all my military awards and pictures of my family, a personal letter from Donald Trump, right? So, my DD-214 was in there, and military awards, pictures of my family, so letters from people, satisfied customers. And by the time I got back, they weren't sitting there looking at their phone. They were looking at a person, and they knew that I was a family man. They knew that I had served my country, and it was just a way for them to get to know me without having to sit there and spend the time that I didn't have with them. Right. And so it's another resource. It's another tool in your toolbox. What little thing can you do? Could you put, on your business card, for example, and I've seen some good ones out there, it's director of sales, marketing this, construction guru, whatever, / family man, put it on your business card. Tell people who you are and what's important to you. And that's going to help with the follow-up, because when you're going to find those points of connection, and connectivity to your customer is always important. It's like you said, Jim, we need to serve them, but it's value for value. So they need to know something enough about us to offer us value also.
That's a genius idea to leave that binder behind. I've never seen anything like that. So good job. If you're a car sales man, you better pick that task up. So not to give away the whole podcast show with Red Suit, but he wrote a book similar to me, but he said, that's my calling card. He goes, I don't carry a business card. I carry my book. When he meets somebody, he gives them a copy of his book because that's his tell-all, right? And then some people will critique him for, like, well, gosh, do you really want them to know all that stuff about you? And he's like, yes, I want to be as transparent as possible, especially when you're making a big transaction like a house, right? Well, right. These days, I just saw a Cadillac for sale for $150,000. So even a car these days is going to cost you an arm and a leg. But, to give somebody that calling card where they can learn more about you, and I don't want to say that a book is a small investment, but Mike Fallett, who did my book, he'll help you write a book for 15 grand. that could be the best 15 grand you've ever spent, because the people that you hand that to will make a deeper connection with you and will conduct business with you because they know who you are. Right. And so there's all kinds of great tools out there really to give some depth to your personality, your strengths, what you do in business, what you stand for, your values, and all those other things. And I've seen a lot of reward from my book being out there and people that I've done business with, especially consulting. And I've had a few say, well, I haven't heard of you before. Why would I know you? Give them my book and say, here's where I've been, right? It'll do the work for you. So I love these types of sales tools.
Yes. And again, it's one of those things. Anytime you find a good idea from someone else, find a way to make it your own, right? No, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. You can always find a way to tune the dial in just a little bit more. If there's a little bit of static out there in the marketplace, find a way to make it work. So any other thoughts out there? I know, Jim, you're busting into, Mr. Spilson, you're busting into a whole new area. And I know that can be challenging in and of itself, but I'll tell you, embrace the process and you'll have some fun with it. I see Samantha with her hand up first, so we'll get back. I see you nodding, Jim, so I'm going to come back to you. But Samantha, your hand's up first. I'm going to you. Go ahead and unmute.
Perfect. Hey, Rod, thanks for that. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Perfect. You hit on such a point that I've been struggling with so much, with 90% of my business right now being social media. And so I'm managing people's social media and I'm acting as if I'm them, or like that person who owns the business in a sense. And I'm trying to make sure I do a really good job to represent their brand. But then on top of it, you get so many people in the social media world that don't treat you like a person, right? So when you said, like, remind them that you're still a person, and I struggle with it constantly because a lot of people say some horrid things, or they're just so rude in their way of going about things that I think that's been one of my biggest struggles of, like, how do I remind these people in the social media platform, right, that I'm still a person? And I think that's one of my biggest struggles right now, of how to go about that in this new world, in a sense of social media and how we interact with it so much in our businesses. And also another point you made is, like, the follow-up at the beginning of your conversation and stuff. And social media is how most people, get their name and their business out there. But it is so important that people are taking their time out of their day to maybe comment on one of your posts or respond back to something that you put on there. That it is important to treat every person, even in the social media world, like it was somebody you were having a conversation with face to face, like following up with their questions or their comments that they said, and not just passing them off like, oh, well, I don't have time today to respond back to 145 comments, on my post. But it's important that you follow up with every one of them and make sure that they all feel special, even in the social media world. So two things you hit on that really I was struggling with, and one that really was like, yeah, that's super important. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Samantha, I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually went to a seminar, attended an online seminar during COVID, and it was talking about social media, and the top influencers, the ones who are literally using their social media to find new customers, they do go through every comment on their posts, or they hire somebody to do it, but they're going through every one. And if somebody left a comment that was 5 words or longer, they responded to every one of them. If it was just a thumbs up or a little heart emoji or something, no, they didn't do that. But if somebody left a 5-word comment, they responded with whatever, was necessary or pertinent to that post. And they are the most successful. So if you want to learn from the most successful people on social media, they are in fact going through the comments, and that's where they're drilling down. That's where they're finding gold. And it takes.
Yeah, you're completely right. When I started with my largest client right now has 500,000 followers just on their brand page. But then them as individuals, the wife has over 2 million followers and the husband's right behind her. So we get a lot of that traction too. And at first I started this client, like, they can't possibly expect me to respond back to there's some days where I'm responding between the messages and the comments to every single person, whether, yes, it's maybe you just put an emoji, so I'm going to give you an emoji back. But there's days where I respond back to 500 people, but that is their brand, and people also feel like they are talking to the owner. You know, I try to respond in a sense of like, people don't know it's not the owner responding back to them. Right.
Right. You represent the
important.
brand. Yeah.
Anyways, thank you.
You bet. Mr. Spilson, you were nodding. What do you got for us? I know you've got something out there.
You know, I've been talking to you guys for a little over a year, and I think I mentioned early on that I was the first person to raise my hand and say, I'm not a sales guy. That was not an area that I wanted to be. I never wanted to be, you know, kind of eating what I kill type of career. And the last year has continually pushed me that direction. And what I was talking with Jim about earlier today, you know, new opportunities are coming in and people are reaching out to me saying, hey, I need your help. I know you're the kind of guy that I want help from in this area. And it's a struggle to really understand and figure out the cold calling aspect. I'm not at a car dealership where people are walking in and the leads are there. It's figuring out how to find them. So I find myself a lot lately going down these rabbit holes of, you know, let me find a client, or let me find a way to get into one or two or a niche or something. And I spend a lot of time, or I waste a lot of time trying to figure out how to get in there as opposed to just doing volume. And I know it's a numbers game. So it's a little bit of balancing. It's a little bit of spending time in things like, you know, Alex Hormozy podcast and Grant Cardone and NEPQ, which I find fascinating these days. You know, they've all got value, but it becomes Jim, I think you mentioned this a few weeks ago, you know, becoming, I think the term was knowledge zombie, where I feel like I need to learn a little bit more. And it's been hitting me the last week. Like, I should have enough to go out and just start. And it's getting that traction. You know, every day I'm learning something more, but it's really kind of pulling that trigger and figuring out how to really, you know, start lighting up the conversations.
Jim, if you're a Hormozy fan, which I am as well, I know Rachel listens to him too. You know, one of the things he does talk about as it sort of relates to that knowledge zombie, you know, it's kind of like the cart before the horse, right? You need to go out and do something so that you understand what they're advising you on doing, which is something that Alex would push, right? Go out there and do some sales, make some mistakes, get some hiccups, and then start soaking up the knowledge to be better at that, right? Otherwise, you won't have any idea what he's talking about, right? As opposed to the opposite, and that soak up all your knowledge and then go out there and try to sell, you're going to learn all over again. So, you know, you got to find that fine line for you, but it seems like you're jumped in with both feet in the sales world for whatever company is lucky enough to have you. You know, when you decide where you're going to go all in at, I think they're going to be fortunate to have you. Now you've got a lot of tools to work with to be successful there. So, you know, it'll be fun.
Yeah, it right now it's a game. It's a numbers game. There's about three opportunities. Plus, there's getting back into the corporate world. There's an opportunity that's in the mix right now as well. So it's kind of a which one's going to hit first. Maybe it's all of them. Maybe it's one of them. But you know, trying to learn and figure out which one is going to kind of get me that foot in the door and that, you know, dip the toe in the water to really get things going.
Yeah.
So it's close.
Well, I'm proud of you, Jim. Number one. Number two.
Thank you.
Everything is sales. Everything is sales. That's so you can't get away from that. You know, asking your wife out the first time was sales, right? I know you've got 2 children, so there was a sales job after that too. So, and the other thing is it gets easier. You get more comfortable in the uncomfort zone. And this ties into something Samantha said too about, you know, people can be mean on social media because they're hiding, you know, the keyboard warriors can say stuff. You develop a skin for, you know, rejection, you know, because don't take it personally. That's just part of the game. And you can't take any of it personally and leave that off. And I know Riley on here tonight switched careers into sales. in a different sort of way, the mortgage industry. And she didn't have a background in that and dove in, but she was an entrepreneur before. So she's trying every strategy out there and soaking it all up. And I know what's going on in her life and that she's having success with that. And it just gets easier and better. And you find ways to do it. Somebody else want to weigh in? I see a face on there, Taylor Claridge and Fred. You're leaning in. I'm seeing some body language out of you, Fred, and I like that. So you got something to say.
I might be slouching. Who knows?
I'm going with the lean in.
Yeah. So, anyways, I can connect with the message you shared tonight. I've been in sales and I never thought I would be a sales guy in my life. I was terrified of people, didn't want to speak to them. So I had to find my own way, and I would have been right there with you with the Be Right Back bus or Be Back bus.
Yeah.
But one thing that I've noticed is people want to buy, but they don't want to be sold.
Yes.
So I always keep that in mind, so when I deal with clients and I work in corporate America now, and I sell to the construction vertical and the refineries. And so you deal with people of all types. And I've always enjoyed getting to know the business from the ground level, the workers doing the actual job. So you can make PPE recommendations that work for the people doing the actual work. And then my job is to balance out the expectations to what corporate wants as far as safety measures are concerned, because they want to check the highest boxes on everything, highest cut levels, abrasion, so on and so forth. And so anyways, I have to build credibility in the field, and then that information that I gather going back to corporate to make my case to implement a program is a very balanced approach. But I always lead with a human element. And that's one of the things I actually put a new presentation together for the company I work for, because I finished the presentation off that showcases new products. But at the end, there literally is a picture of me and my family. We're all wearing cowboy hats, for Y.E.S. And it says straight on there, family first, because I want them to know, just like our podcast, what we stand for, or what I personally stand for. And I'll tell you, more times than not, as soon as people they understand what your common denominator is, those walls come down.
Yes.
And so if you can establish that trust, and that's really what it's about. I've had the same clients for 20 years because they trust me. And even corporate buyers from Lowe's, they're still my friends. But it's not, we've done business together and you form a relationship built on trust, and it sticks forever because you've always done right by them. A lot of the same things that you had reiterated or you shared tonight on the follow-up, the quality of your follow-up, the authenticity, a lot of things that we talk about on here. And I think that's kind of the lost art that people, they think they got to be the shuck and jive guy, kind of fast talking, spinning deals, this, that. Well, people can do too much research now, so they might catch you in a moment where they can sell you something quick. But nowadays, not so much. People are going to be a little bit more analytical. They're going to make sure that they know they have options, and they're going to get what they want, but they want to buy from somebody they like and they trust, more importantly. And so I definitely connect with a lot of the things that you're doing. It's interesting on how I've been struggling a little bit trying to figure out how do you get a little message out about yourself. And I think we talked a few months ago about doing recordings or videos that you could email. My challenge is that since I work for a fairly large company, that I have to deal with the corporate mindset. And so you don't necessarily have some of these luxuries. So I'm trying to build it outside of that, but then there's also a fine line there. So you got to be kind of careful. But at the same time, those baseline principles that you discussed tonight are magic. That's where it's at, is that you got to figure out how to get that trust and not be overzealous or over eager. So you push them away. But as soon as you cross that line, you'll know, because that light bulb goes on. And I wanted to touch Jim on a red suit, Scott Orson. I got to know him just recently through my partner on the podcast, and he's about as legit as you get. Everything that he puts out there, he spoke extremely highly of you. I didn't know he was going to be on your podcast. I think we talked the day after, and he interrogated me on what stand for it means. And out of love. And so, but it was good because even Sean and I, my partner, we reflected back on it, and we had a really good conversation. He kind of drug out some stuff that we need to probably be a little bit more clear on, but great guy, spoke super highly of you. I know he told me that he read your book, which is very cool. And but there's a perfect example. You guys found a way to connect, that common denominator. You trust him, he absolutely trusts you, and you know, you guys are a phone call away from having a relationship, regardless if it's a business deal or just friendly advice or just to say hi. So anyways,
Yeah.
that's
I'm gonna chime in after Fred when you're ready.
Yeah. I'm good.
All right. So I was wearing a very different hat today. I was wearing the Lynx bourbon hat all day today. I mean, not literally, but
I like your hat tonight. Looks badass.
thank you. Thank you.
Mama
I
bear.
got this. I got this today. Check this out. Okay, this is very cool. This is a Velcro, and you can take it off, and then it has a different logo. So
Cool.
they have different expressions, and you can like change the Velcro. That's their gimmick. Anyways, all right.
Very
So I guess-
SoCal, Rachel. Very SoCal.
Very, yes.
You're not going to see Jim wearing one of those anymore.
No, you've traded. Yeah. So I'm at this event all day today. It's the celebrity golf tournament. We've got NBA players there, NFL players. I mean, it's like the who's who in the sports world, right? And I'm there representing Lynx Bourbon because we're there. We're one of the sponsors of the event. We're giving away tastings. It's selling a product. And when you're selling a product, your features, your benefits, this is how it tastes, this is why you'll love it, right? It's a whole different skill set than when I'm wearing the Sunday brunch agency hat talking about marketing and selling a service business. So today, it was feature benefit, but with Sunday brunch, I'm selling my personal brand because people are buying their faith and trust in me. So the importance of a strong personal brand is much more important versus when you're buying a commodity product. Also, when I'm selling for Sunday brunch as a service, sometimes people come to me or it's a referral, but other times I'm hunting. And I want to talk about the hunt. So there's this company called Custom Comfort Mattress. They've been around for over 30 years. They started in Southern California, handmade in America. They make these gorgeous high-end mattresses. I have wanted them as a client forever. And they're family owned. So I figured out who the family members are. And this is going to sound a little creepy, but I started like, what associations were they a part of? What chambers of commerce did they go to? I started going to those events. I started making friends of friends, getting introductions. This is years in the making. Last year, one of the brothers, recognized me at an event and he was like, oh yeah, like you've been on my radar. We're actually launching another new store. I'd love for you to come in and help with events. You do that, right? I'm thinking to myself, not really, but okay, yes, we do events. Yeah, we do events too. He's like, great. So they hired us to come in as a project and do an event. We killed it. And it was a huge success for them as an organization because we used our other tools in our toolkit to do more than just the event, right? We had the press there. We provided content to their social media agency. We played nice in the sandbox with their other agency partner who was there. Well, am I jealous of their agency partner? Hell yeah. But instead I was like, how can I proactively make this better, more value for them? And I mean, I'm literally there. My whole team is there. We're taking photos, we're taking videos. I'm picking up trash. I mean, I'm doing all the things, right? So then a couple of months later, last month, their agency calls me and they're like, hey, we really don't want to do the social media for Custom Comfort Mattress anymore. I'm like, why? They're like, oh, we don't like where social media is going as a platform. It's too much time. It's too much energy. We just want to do like big campaignable stuff. And a lot of agencies have gone that direction. And I'm like, okay, great. They're like, oh, do you want the social media account? Because we thought you were so nice to work with that night. It would be so seamless if we could just hand it over to you. And I'm like, oh, yes, absolutely. So because I've built a nice personal brand, I've hunted them, I've genuinely followed up, I've gotten to know them. Now they're offering it to me. Okay, so that's last week. And then I send them the proposal. They love it. Everything sounds good. They haven't signed yet. So this weekend, I'm like kind of stressing. I'm like, why haven't they signed? Why haven't they signed? So I proactively went to one of their showrooms over the weekend, filmed some content, wrote a script, edited it together on into a reel, sent it to them, and hey, just for fun, thinking about you this weekend. You feel free to use this if you want. I know you're celebrating like Sleep Awareness Month. Thought this might be helpful. Like, you know, little thoughtful touches to let them know that, and just so you guys know, like behind the scenes, I'm still hunting. I'm still trying to find my niche with them. And, you know, I'll let you know next week how it goes, but it's just a different type of sell than what I did today with Lynx, where it was really easy. You want a bottle? You want a bottle? Yeah. Okay. Like that's a different transaction. So I think different type of sales require a different skill set. And sometimes the shifting of the gears is like, you got to practice, you know, especially if you're selling different types of things to different people at different times. So anyways, I hope the personal story helped. I sometimes like a nice personal story. So there's my 2 cents for tonight.
And that's why Rachel connects with Montanans. She's a hunter.
Yes.
I got to tell you a real quick story in class today. I've got all high schoolers, right? They're telling stories. It's part of their assignment in class. 3 of them told a personal hunting story, one of which him and his buddies killed over 315 geese on a hunt. Literally, it filled up the whole truck and they were falling out. I said, if you told this story in California, they'd be mortified. So anyways, I'm in a different time and different place in life.
That's great. Taylor, I want to hear from you because you have your debut. I've seen it on Instagram today. We have gone from teasers to photos. So how are you feeling about your debut this weekend?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good. I think it's just technicalities and the unknown that have me a little bit nervous for that and for our online launch. But I think it's going well. Actually, while I'm just talking, I wanted to speak to something that Jim Y.E.S had mentioned about just your experience right now, Jim. I was thinking back to this video I was watching. It was actually like a baking video. I was trying to learn about baking something specific, and this lady that was talking about it, it was like she was speaking directly to me and she didn't know it, but she was talking about how sometimes we don't do the thing because we're afraid that we're going to waste our time, our money, our ingredients, or whatever. And she said, we need to change that thought process. Quit thinking of it as a waste and start thinking of that as an investment into your learning, an investment into your experience. So anyway, that was very helpful to me. Maybe it's helpful to somebody else, but I did want to ask though, for whoever might have some input, I think Rachel, you touched maybe a few weeks ago on writing a press release. And I'm just wondering, like, at what point in your business is it best, number one, to formulate a press release? And then what are the actionable steps that you can take to, like, where do I go? What do I do? Basically, just tell me everything.
Yeah. All right. So teachable moment here for everybody. So if you're asking yourself if now is the right time to write a press release, then now's the time. And if you haven't done it by now, you should do it now. So do that. Now, one of the most important, and I'm happy to look at it, by the way, because you're going to want to put this on a certain template and you're going to want to write it in a certain tone and tense in order to get it approved to go out. It can't be in the, personal. It has to be written like with a third person voice. So there's that. You're going to want to have a quote from you in there. You're going to want to have a quote from somebody else in there. You're going to want to have a boilerplate at the bottom, which is your about statement about the company. I can even give you a template if you'd like. Then there's 2 things that you can choose to do once you have your approved press release. First, if you have the time, I would pitch it to the media that is the most important to you. Now, depending on where your business is and what it is, it might be a geographic pitch to local media. Or if it's a lifestyle play, it might be to certain editors and reporters and magazines that are of the utmost important to your target audience in their lifestyle play, right? So give yourself a couple weeks, because they're not all going to jump on it right away. It might not align with their editorial calendars. But you're going to want to make sure that your headline and your subheadline are hooks that are going to appeal to them, which means that if it's a lifestyle play versus a geographical play, you might actually have two headlines. So there's that variable. Then you want to put it out over the wire. And when you put it out on the wire, you're not doing it to get anyone to write an article about you. You're putting it on the wire because it's going to help with your SEO. It's going to help build brand awareness. It's going to help with your reputation, and it's going to get syndicated, if it's done well, to hundreds of outlets. And that's going to give you third-party credibility. And that's why you do it. Because when anybody Googles you, it's going to come up. So, and then you can use those logos on your website. You can use them on social and future emails and that kind of stuff. But a lot of the value happens before it hits the wire. It happens when you're making the outreach to those local editors and reporters. And you have to have a pitch written in the email that's personal to them. So let's say you're pitching to around here, we have the Orange County Register, right? And so Colleen works at the Orange County Register. So I have to say, hey, Colleen, I love the article you wrote last week about this new restaurant that just opened. I know since you're covering food, you're going to be interested to know that this other restaurant is opening. Want to make sure that this is on your radar. When can I set aside some time for you to meet with the owner? Attached is a press release that gives you more details. This is under embargo right now. We haven't shared it with anybody. Want to give you the exclusive. Let me know if you're interested. Happy to hold it, so that you can cover this first. Now, you might send that similar message to 3 or 4 people and give them all the first chance, right? So there's some legwork that goes into it. And I think I have a how-to guide on press releases that we can put on the back end that is a good resource tool for everybody. But this was like a 50,000 foot view steps. So let me know as you're going through this. I'm happy to give you feedback.
Thanks, Rachel.
Hey,
I have a
Rod.
quick question. How do you put it on the wire? That's a technical question, I guess, but how do you put a press release on the wire?
So there's different services you can use to put it on the wire, and some are more prestigious than others. Cision is the most expensive, creme de la creme, like Neiman Marcus of wires. Then and that's going to cost you, let's say, about $1,500. And then you've got cheaper ones that, are not as well known and don't go out to as many outlets. So then there's a few in the middle of the road that are actually reputable and more cost efficient. And I will put that in the document with links to that. Most of the time you need to sign up for an account, and they always have to fact check you to make sure that it's written in the right tone and tense and that it's, accurate. So that's an important part of the process. So the best time to send out a press release is Tuesday mornings. And I am religiously a stickler for that. And you want it to go on like East Coast time, like an odd but early time, like 5:15 in the morning or 4:45 or something super crazy early, but not exactly on the hour. It's just going to get picked up by more outlets. So if you sent it out at like 11 o'clock on a Friday, it's not going to get picked up or syndicated to as many places because people are checked out already. So you want to hit when everybody's working.
Makes sense. Thanks, Rachel. Does that help, Taylor?
Rod, just to
Yeah,
touch on
thank
that
you
real
so
quick.
much.
Right, just as a follow-up, maybe a little housekeeping too. Taylor, it feels like that was a question you might have had for a little while. Maybe you're waiting for tonight, but if you guys hop on our platform on the back end, you can reach out to Rachel, myself, or Rod specifically with questions during the week. And we can provide materials early, or you don't have to feel like you've got to wait for tonight to ask those questions. And as Rachel suggested, we'll put something on the back end in our documents file that is on the new platform. There's some other documents back there. By the way, I used Fiverr, Rachel, a couple weeks ago, just as a test for a press release. It cost me $25 to have somebody draft the release and push it out to something that they were members of. And it got picked up by like 200, probably C- level outlets, but the SEO went up, and we were able to use a couple of those CBS news logos, for the press release. So I think Rachel's approach, though, Taylor, is very pointed. Find some local. And by the way, when you're at the show this week, and I know that it's going to take a couple weeks to pull something together, if you find some of the bigger manufacturers that maybe one of them interested in your product, like 406 Ammunition, they've got a big booth. You might want to get a quote from them, like what they think about your product as manufacturers, and you could use their quote as being industry people in your press release. So you could probably solve that issue right there at the show. Maybe you even donate a product to them to get the quote, right? But there's probably 5 big manufacturers that show up at that show, and I'm sure you could get a quote from at least one of them to use for your press release, right? So anyways, there's my 2 cents. Back to you, Rod. Thank you.
Yeah, well, unless anyone else has any questions, I'll open it up for questions. And if none, we covered a lot of ground tonight, and we'll cut this off and start again next week. Anybody else?
No questions,
Jim.
but 2 very quick comments.
Yes,
Taylor,
Jim, go ahead.
I portioned my food down to the last bite. I saw your post today, and it triggered me so hard. It's the engineer in me something. My mind works in the background to ensure that I get down to equal portions. I got a good laugh out of that one. Rachel, I finally got the dentist to the table, and he's working on 2 pages of action item questions. So hopefully I will be able to meet with him this week and follow up.
Terrific. Thank you for that update. I was wondering about it, but I figured, timing is everything, and you would let me know. So that's
Yes,
great.
it's moving.
Cool.
Great call
Excellent.
tonight, everyone.
Hey, thank you very much. And if you're watching this afterward, remember you can catch us online, Young Entrepreneurs Syndicate, and you can catch us every Monday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And you can catch the podcast on The Answer is Yes. You will find it there with Mr. Jim Riley. And we look forward to seeing you next week and on the podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.